Hey folks, Kilt-Man here. And took me kilt. Doesn't feel so bad after all. Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man at your service. What you're hearing there is Bronislaw Capers' bombastic, mysterioso, energetic score for 1954's creature feature, top big bug movie, Them! Exclamation mark. Them! And this was, of course, I'll turn it down a wee bit. Now we've had the dramatic effect. This is, without a doubt, one of my favourite movies from that vintage era. There's ants everywhere here. The Atomic Age, the 50s. What a golden, halcyon time for sci-fi and horror. You had creatures from black lagoons, you had things from other worlds, you had wars of the worlds, you had all sorts going on. You had incredibly shrinking men with big spiders and just praying mantis, beasts from 20,000 fathoms. Everything, but everything got bigger and nastier. And if they didn't get bigger, then we got smaller to combat these things. And it was just a great time of outrageous ideas and concepts, and a pioneering time for special effects as well. But hey, we're not talking about all the other ones, we're going to talk about them. Yes, the giant ants. Gordon Douglas directs with verve and gusto, but what he does as well, which is a clever little manipulation, is that it's part police procedural and scientific narrative, as well as giant ants on the rampage. These giant ants, you say, Kilt-Man, where did they come from? Well, I'll tell you. They are a direct result of the atomic bomb testing in White Sands in New Mexico in the desert. And they've had years to mutate and change from those little things like that to things 9 feet long, maybe more. And after a string of mysterious disappearances in the desert, State Policeman Ben Peterson, played by the great James Whitmore, who looks just like my father-in-law, the great Bob Olty, everyone's favourite father-in-law. His partner gets killed. They work out what's been doing it alongside 18-foot tall James Arness, playing a special FBI agent, who incidentally would also portray the Thing from Another World because he's so damn big and all that. Those two will team up with Doctors Medford, two of them, played by, it's a father and daughter combo, played by Edmund Gwenn and Joan Weldon. And this quartet, alongside General O'Brien and Major Kibbe, will literally destroy the ants' nest in the New Mexico desert. But too late, because a queen has escaped with her consorts and they've flown around the US, and oh dear, all sorts of bedlam and mayhem will ensue, particularly in the enormously exciting climax set in the storm drains of Los Angeles. So, we're getting ahead of ourselves again. This is a film where, you have the opening salvo is these mysterious events. Ben Peterson, James Whitmore, and his partner, Ed Blackburn, are driving down the desert highway, and they encounter a little girl lost, wandering through the sands, clutching a little doll with a chunk missing out of its head. She's in a trance. They can't bring her around, so they put her in the car and they drive a bit further on. They've got a spotter plane in the air, and it's seen, there's a camper and a trailer down the road. Maybe she's from them. So they go down there and they discover wreckage. No bodies, no people, but the entire side of the camper has been. This wasn't caved out. This wasn't caved in. It was caved out. And a gun's been fired, and there's wreckage everywhere. And they find the remnant of the doll's head, fit that together, so they know that the little girl was from there. And they call in, the investigative teams and a bunch of, medics who just put the girl in the back of the ambulance. But whilst they're tending to her, you hear this strange noise. You've heard it before, that weird, what they call a stridulation. And that is the noise that ants make, because they communicate with each other over quite, vast distances compared to their little sizes. And they hear this noise, but as James Whitmore, Ben Peterson, and this medic sort of go, they're looking around, what's that? The little girl sits up behind them, like that, clutching her doll, and then finally it fades out, and again they haven't seen her. She just goes back down, goes back into her trance again, because she knows what that sound is. It's the ants. So straight after that, James Whitmore and his partner drive off to old Gramps' store. This is like a little desert highway, grocery store come gas station. And it's turned nighttime by now, and the wind has struck up across the desert. There's a sandstorm coming in, and it's really spectacularly eerie. And they go in there, place is in disarray. Where's Gramps? They find his 2020 Winchester. The barrel has been bent in half. There's sugar on the floor. Sugar again. Nothing's been robbed from the till. His tea's on the table. There's still steam coming out the kettle from when he's been making coffee. So whatever's happened has only just happened. They fling back the door to the cellar. And there's Gramps lying there, all twisted and broken. Bit of blood on him as well. Call this in. I'm going to the station. Ed, you stay here. Wait for the cavalry to arrive. Poor old Ed. As soon as his partner's driven off, Ed hears that noise again. Turns the lights out, draws his revolver, and he walks out of the huge hole in the wall where, like the camper van, it's been wrenched out. And we hear him fire a couple of shots, and we hear that terrible high-pitched screaming and hollering, and the Wilhelm scream, in fact, and he's gone. So now we've got missing people, deaths, a girl in a trance. They found prints around all these, mysterious crime scenes, strange prints. No mountain lion made those. Maybe it was something set down, who knows. They take a plaster cast of it and they send it off, and the FBI send down that huge hulking dude of James Arness, who again has no idea what the hell that is, but something really bad's going on quite clearly. So they send it off to the entomology department. That's insects to you and me. And Doctors Medford, the two of them arrive. Now these guys know exactly what it is. They know what that print is. They can tell what's happening. They go and see the little girl in the hospital who hasn't said a word, hasn't come round. They find that Gramps' body has been filled with formic acid. Not only has his back been broken, has he been punctured in his lungs and all that, he's been filled full of enough formic acid to kill 20 men. What the hell is going on? No homicidal nut jobs have escaped from any loony bins that can do that kind of thing, But these scientists clearly have a clue. So they go and see the little girl, and they have a little jar of formic acid, and the girl's just sitting there, and they waft that from under her nose. And in one of the great and actually quite heartbreaking sequences, the girl just reacts, screams, retreats into a corner in a great defensive pose in the corner, and just screams, "Them! Them!" Oh my God. The hairs in the back of my neck have just risen as well, because it's such a paralysingly effective sequence. A small child who's not even in jeopardy at that moment, but it's her clear recollection of it. Dear God. So that's it. Time is of the essence. They've got to get out there. So they go out to the earlier crime scene where the little girl came from, and they find some more prints. That noise strikes up again. The wind is howling, and the doctor's daughter, Pat Medford. Girl in distress, goes off on their own, finds a few more prints, and she's just beneath this huge rise in the sand. And what comes lumbering over? A huge 1950s special effect ant. And it is big. It's big antennae, you know, that like. But you know what? Looks great. And she gets terrorised by this thing. The cops turn up. You know, James Arness is there. And in a great moment, Edmund Gwenn, who plays the father, the older, lovable, curmudgeonly, eccentric scientist, he's brilliant. He actually played Kris Kringle in the original Miracle on 34th Street. So, you know, he's a lovable kind of guy, and he's great in this role as well. Bit of a bumbling fool, but he knows, he's clued up, and he's shouting, "Shoot the antennae! Shoot the antennae!" And some good shots there. Poof, poof, one goes down. "Shoot the other antennae! Shoot the other antennae!" So James Whitmore, the great James Whitmore, fires off all the bullets in his revolver, legs it back to the car. In a moment that, when you watch it, it looks like he's going, "Oh, it's no fucking good. I'm out of here." It looks like he's turned tail and fled. But he comes back with a Tommy gun. Oh, yeah. Is that, you know, standard issue for state troopers? A Tommy gun in the boot? Anyway, it looks great. And this thing emits a huge scream, drops down. A great big, you know, 10-foot carcass of rubber and polystyrene and all sorts of whatever. But it's tremendously great. And they go, "What is it?" "It's an ant." "What? No ants are that size." "It's an ant." "Tell me, where were the first atomic bombs tested?" "Oh, just over there." It's possible these are mutated ants from those first bomb tests. And of course they are. Has anyone seen a huge conical shape in the desert? A huge big sort of tower of sand? No. So they get in the helicopters and the planes and they go out and then they find it. And of course that's the nest of all these giant ants. Oh dear, oh dear. So they cue a great sequence where, you know, they fire bazookas to put down, you know, strips of napalm to keep the surface temperature roasting hot, because they know that the ants won't come out during the daytime. They forage and scout at night when it's cooler. So they hit their strike is at midday. And of course, you know, in the typical thing about 1950s movies or films from this era, you know, the cop who finds whatever's happened at the start of it, he ends up being the guy throughout the entire rest of the movie, where the point where his job would stop, he's now dressed in military fatigues and firing bazookas, you know, at this thing. He will then go on to Washington and meet, you know, presidential bigwigs in a think tank. He will then use flamethrowers and machine guns in the storm drains of Los Angeles much later on. You know, where does your jurisdiction end? You know, you're a state trooper. Your state was New Mexico. And even James Arness, as the FBI guy, the two of them, they get totally involved in the whole thing. And that's what's great about it, because you follow this crew throughout all of this increasingly terrifying and epic adventure. But once they've decimated this ant's nest, they've got to go in to make sure that they're all dead. But there's an ulterior motive. The scientists know that if any queens have got away, then there's going to be other colonies getting set up anywhere. When they say to me, "Oh, is this the end, Doctor?" The end? Oh no. This could be the beginning of the end of us. It's a biblical reference come true. You know, the beasts shall inherit the earth. But they go down there, and in a great moment as well for like 1950s feminism, Joan Weldon playing Patricia Medford gets dressed up in military fatigues, puts the gas mask on, because they pump cyanide gas into the nest as well to try and knock out all the ants that are down there. They make this descent. Oh, and it's really spectacularly eerie, going past all these bodies in this ground mist of cyanide. And it's all like, because the ants have traps and water traps and walls and hidden, you know, caves, the ants come through and they torch them. And then they find the ants at the Queen's domain, you know, her palatial nursery. And oh shit, yeah, some of the queens have hatched and they've gone. Shit, we were too late. in a great moment as well. You see some of these sort of egg cocoons, and you can see inside these things are moving. Very similar to in Alien, where John Hurt first peers into the xenomorph egg, and you can see movement inside. Very similar to that. And of course, the references from the film then are far-reaching. Alien, with people going through ducts with flamethrowers, is exactly the same as in this. Aliens, with the little girl Newt who survives, is a direct callback to the little girl lost at the start of them. Direct, completely influenced by it. Films like Chud, where they descend into the sewers in New York to find these cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers, and they've got flamethrowers and Geiger counters. Very similar again. Larry Cohen's awesome movie It's Alive about the mutant baby ends in the storm drains of Los Angeles, exactly where this film ends, and his was a direct homage to this film. Mimic for Guillermo del Toro, People always say Starship Troopers is, that was the remake of them. I've seen lots of critics say that. That's the one where I draw the line. Starship Troopers is based on a bunch of novels. It's nothing to do with the film Them at all. Anyway, apart from, it's a bug planet, But, so they realise, shit, we haven't done this. So then we've got to avoid a mass panic, because if the world, the nation finds out about this, there's not a police force on the planet that could control the hysteria which would ensue. Quite right too. So off our little team goes to Washington, and they show films what ants are like. They show all the evidence. So how do we combat this then? Well, without telling anybody what it's all about, we put out a big alert for any strange things in the sky, any lights, any missing people, any huge conical ants' nests in the desert. And because they know these things can fly, so you get all these reports. You get an attack on a ship at sea, which is spectacular. It comes through by a Morse code, and we cut to this ship which has been overrun by giant ants. How the hell did they get there? Well, they work it out that in Acapulco this ship was docked in for 3 days, but they left one of the hatch covers open overnight. It would look very inviting to a queen ant, says Professor Edmund Gwen. So in it goes, and it's laid its eggs, and they infest the ship, and you see carnage ensue there, and that ship is then sunk, by naval gunfire. So that's all quiet. And then they have to go and interview all drunks who've seen things. There's a huge sugar theft from a freight train. And it's great that we do it. This is where the police procedural thing comes in. And you do spend time interviewing all these various bizarre people, these drunk characters who've seen flying things, and giant ants. And it's great. You get to know these people, and it's just so wonderfully colourful, But then it all turns very grim again, where there's a guy who's been driving his car in Los Angeles. He's crashed his car. When they get to him, they discover he's only got one arm. One arm's been wrenched off. Well, where's he come from? What's happened? When they bring his distraught wife in, he had our 2 sons with him. Where's my boys? Well, where would he have been? Well, when he's not working, he takes them out to fly the planes. But where? They check out a park, they check out this place, that place. And then some drunk, who's tremendously exciting to watch, very sort of OTT. He lives in this sort of veterans hospital, really. And they go and interview him, and you won't get any sense out of him, they say. Just you behave yourself now, they say to him. And he's just like, well, they're not there now, he says, looking out the window, down into those great big storm drains, those dried riverbeds, those cement riverbeds that crisscross Los Angeles. They're not there now. What aren't there? Oh, the ants. I see them there. Anyway, off he drifts again. So they realise, shit, that's where he was. So they go down there and they find the crashed remains of one of these toy planes. So and the entire track's in there. They realise, okay, there's the entrance to one of the storm drains. They've been down here flying the planes. One or more of the ants have attacked from out of there. The father, Mr. Lodge, tries to defend his kids, gets his arm ripped off. The kids run in there. He gets in his car, drives off, crashes, dies. They're in there. So they bring in all the US Marines from Camp Pendleton. And they do one of those tremendous little broadcasts to everybody. You know, we're under martial law. Please go back to your homes. Lock your doors. Lock your windows. Giant ants are on the rampage. You know, if you heard that now, you'd be like, fuck off. Actually, I wouldn't. I'd be like, shit. Told you so. I told you so. Knew all this would come true. And all these Marines, and they go into the storm drains, they've got maps there and everything. It's just brilliant. And then James Whitmore, the great James Whitmore. I keep singing his praises because he is so, so good. You would see him in the mid-90s, in the twilight of his years. He would appear in another great monster movie, Peter Hyams' adaptation of The Relic. And he's tremendous in that as a wheelchair-bound, professor in the Chicago Museum of Natural History. And I love the guy to bits. He's so, so good. He's stoic, but he's got humanity, and he does crack, There is emotion there. He's lost his partner. He's very tender with the little girl that they find there. And of course, in the climax of this movie, you've got the two sons of Mr. Lodge, who, when they're driving through these tunnels, they hear a noise, stop all engines, and they're all communicating with each other in different tunnels. They're all in jeeps. There are tons of soldiers there, looks great, And he's like, I hear a noise. And they climb, where's that tunnel go? Or it goes to an area that's still under construction, but they stopped work 6 months ago. Get the lights turned on in there. And he crawls through. And he sees the two lads, these two little boys who are being menaced by the giant ants. And he manages to prise these bars back so he can get out the hole. I can't get him with the flamethrower, the kids are in the way. So he drops down there. In the end, he starts fighting these ants, gets the two kids, pushes them back up. Down the other end of there's a man called Smitty. He'll look after you. Gets them out as another ant comes up behind him and gets its huge big fucking mandibles. He's getting swung around. And it's good, The effects are good. Yes, they're of their time. These giant ants don't move very fast. And there's only ever 3 on screen because they only ever made 3 of these. And have a guess who made those ants, or had a hand in making them? The great makeup supremo, Dick Smith. Dick Smith, most famous for Reagan in The Exorcist. The spinning head, the vomit, and all that. The crucifix, that's what he did. And he started off being a part of teams making these huge monsters in the 50s movies. And he had a hand in making these giant ants. And they look great. The only thing that betrays them is the slowness of their movements. If you imagine, you've seen how ants move. They move exceptionally fast. Now, and if this portentous, ominous story ever did come true, we wouldn't have a chance. Human beings would not last. They say if these colonised around the world, that man would be extinct within a year. Well, I think it'd be far less than that. These things are just the size of an ant's colony. You've seen them when they go on the march. Even the most, the normal ones in temperate zones like ours in Europe and across America. Not the big jungle ones, which are fucking like that anyway, and eat meat. And they've got huge big mandibles. And of course they've got a sting in as well. That's where the formic acid came from. That's why the little girl recognised the smell of formic acid and associated it with them. So poor Ben gets crushed, sacrifices himself. And then the Marines all come in, led by James Arness. James Arness, the FBI guy, who's now leading the Marines. And I love the way that, I said before, I love how these two guys have gone way beyond the remit of their actual jobs and took charge completely. But it's great. And they machine gun all these and flamethrower them and use rocket-propelled grenades. And then they find, deep down, they find 3 more of these queen ants with their wings like that, looking up like that, kind of like, shit, we're doomed here. And then they flame them out, and that's it, they've got them all, it's over. Or is it? Because how many more bombs were tested? And I timed that right to the conclusive music as well during that sequence. Folks, them is tremendous. And absolutely galvanisingly exciting and suspenseful movie. Its opening salvo, that opening third of mysterious deaths and disappearances in the desert, is tremendously suspenseful and really atmospheric. Even when you watch the film again and again and again, those moments are still perhaps the best. Gordon Douglas's treatment of kids in the film is amazing. That little girl, whose name I don't know, it breaks me in two every time I see her reaction. And even just the opening shot of her walking through the desert clutching a doll with that glazed look on her face, it is, totally emotional stuff. But the two little lads who are trapped at the end, who get away, they do survive. One of those went on, his name was Mike Bellis, went on to become a composer for the TV miniseries It, and other stuff as well. But the look on his face, he has these ants are coming for them, and they're knocking all these pillars down and girders, and the kids are in the corner like that, and these ants are coming for him. He absolutely looks so petrified. On the other hand, the other lad, who's a bit older, is just stood there like that, and there's no expression on his face. And I've been watching the film with people who've gone like, oh, that kid can't act, look at him. If you've ever seen anyone in shock, in fear of their life, hemmed up in a corner while a massive brawl takes place, someone's got a knife on them, well, I have. And not everyone screams and looks. Some people, they just stand there, they're completely zombie-like. And I'm afraid for me, that works. One is totally anguished, one is just no expression. And it works for me totally every time. James Arness is great. Again, he's from Gunsmoke, he went into lots and lots of movies. But for me, it's this film and it's him playing the Thing from Another World. Just that seals him, in the Titans of Terror, Hall of Fame for me. James Whitmore, amazing. Edmund Gwenn, curmudgeonly, a bit of a buffoon. He knows everything about ants and ant society and everything that's going to happen to the world, but he can't work out how to use a radio or a microphone and put goggles on his face. None of that matters. Joan Weldon, as I say, feminist. She leads. She goes into the nest. She goes everywhere with them. And when they discover that the ants have got away from that nest in the desert, she goes, right, burn them, kill them all, burn them now. And you see James Arness and James Whitmore are both like, they're taken aback by her ferocious stance. Kill them now, burn them, destroy everything. I'm like, shit, and then the flames go out. Tremendous stuff. The film was meant to be filmed in colour and in 3D. At the last minute, the studio pulled the plug on the finances and the film was shot black and white and flat. Doesn't matter. But you do get to see the opening shot, the opening title. The little girls go across the desert and you see the word THEM come out the screen in thick red letters, ringed by blue with an exclamation mark. Full colour, and it comes out the screen. The ants come towards the screen. Flamethrowers unleash their fire into the screen. So the film was known it was going to be in colour and in 3D, and they're the remnants that still remain. This noise here, the stridulation, which is so spectacularly eerie, that's tree frogs. They recorded varieties of tree frogs and put it all together and embellished it, and it's just so spectacularly strange. What else can I tell you about it? Other than it's just so thoroughly entertaining, and it never loses that sense of mystery, never loses that sense of propulsion that, God, we have got to stop this before it gets out of hand. If we don't, it's the end of us. No other big bug movie managed to pull that off quite so effectively. Yes, these ants, some people are going to go there, they're not realistic at all. For the time, and that's amazing. When you think they pulled the budget on everything, so those ants, that's why you've only got 3 of them. But you will think you're seeing more. The attack on the ship, there's only a couple of shots in there, but it looks, oh God. Incidentally, a young Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock, is in there with a speaking role. He picks up a report from this Texan flyboy who's seen the ants, and they've locked him up in like a loony bin to try and keep him quiet. And where there's tall tales to be told, Texans tell him. And that's Leonard Nimoy, a young Spock in there. It's just an amazing movie. It pays reward every time. I watch this movie, and I watch it a hell of a lot. It was originally meant to be filmed in New York as well, and they're going to use the subway system, but New York went, no, you're not shutting down that, no, which is why it ended up being the storm drains. So folks, that was a whistle-stop tour of them! The best creature feature, the best big bug movie ever made. Folks, if you're getting a bit itchy now, that strange smell, and that weird noise, here you go, let's get it again. The shots of them hearing that and looking out across the desert, just alone, oh, they give you the creeps. The film could be remade, and I'd love to see it remade. I'm not normally into remakes, but this, if you did like maybe a two-part mini-series, first part entirely set in the desert, second part entirely set, urban, and with ants and today's effects, moving fast, and lots of them, a horror horde of crash and crush killers. Folks, take it easy, be safe, be happy, and watch out on your next picnic. And I'm going to see you all later. Ants in your pants.